Hello and welcome to a Powerline Systems video tutorial on a feature called Isoclearance lines. The Isoclearance lines feature creates polylines along the ground tin surface of your PLS-CADD model that represent contour lines of constant clearance values. Isoclearance lines can be used to identify areas of ground that have insufficient clearance, which can help facilitate regrading efforts to remediate clearance issues. Let's take a look at an example project and see how the feature works. In order to use this feature, you first need to make sure you have a project with a good ground surface model. So we'll turn on the display of our tin surface in the 3D view just to confirm that there is a good ground surface model and that it extends far enough away from centerline to perform the needed clearance checks. And we can see that this project has a good tin surface and it extends quite a bit beyond centerline. So to run the Isoclearance line feature, you navigate to Terrain, Tin, Isoclearance lines, Create Clearance Tin. When the dialog opens, you'll see the first thing at the top is the structure range. Just for the sake of this quick example, we will run the feature for just the single span from structures 2 to 3. Next, we have this section that asks if we want to only look at the wire's currently displayed conditions or use the criteria settings in Criteria, Survey Point Clearance, and Danger Tree Locator. Navigating to this section of the criteria, you can see in the upper half portion you can enter all of the weather cases and cable conditions you'd like to have the clearances evaluated under, things like heavy wind or ice, or a combination of the two, or a high operating temperature, for example. Going back to the Isoclearance line feature, we can see that the next input we face is what type of clearance check to perform. The vertical clearance check will only look at the worst vertical clearance found to each point along the wire in a cross-sectional plane perpendicular to the wire. The next option will do a radial minimum distance, also in a cross-sectional plane perpendicular to the wire. And the third check is a spherical check, a true minimum 3D distance in any direction from the wire. For this example, we'll choose the true minimum 3D distance option. This option here caps the analysis so the program does not spend time checking clearances to ground points that are beyond this distance to the wire. There's an option to create a new isoclearance tin or append the results to an existing tin. And the last options are to draw various markers on the screen, which are only recommended for debugging operations since they take a long time to create and can clutter the screen. Once we click OK, the feature will start running. The time it takes to run the analysis will depend upon the number of weather cases it has to look at and the density of your ground tin. But as you can see in this example with an average tin and several weather cases, it only takes a few seconds to generate the isoclearance tin. Now we get to display the isoclearance contour lines, and we can do that by navigating to Terrain, Tin, Isoclearance lines, Clearance Tin Display Options. You'll notice this dialog is identical to your standard ground tin display options. Here you have the normal ground tin display options, but we're already rendering the ground tin, so we don't need to make any adjustments here. Instead, what we will do is add our contour lines, and we'll start with an interval spacing of 2 feet, add a label every 10 feet for a contour line, and place labels on those 10-foot interval lines every 20 feet of station, and click OK. As we look around in the 3D view, you can see there's typical contour lines drawn now on the tin surface, but rather than indicating rings of constant elevation like a typical contour line does, anywhere along these contour lines now represents a minimum clearance to the wires. What we can do with this information now is hone in on places along the tin surface with insufficient clearance that may be easily remediated by regrading. Let's say, for example, that on this particular line, any part of the ground surface with less than 34 feet of clearance is an issue. If we navigate back to Terrain, Tin, Isoclearance lines, Clearance Tin Display Options, we can set a maximum cap on the isoclearance lines displayed so that it only shows lines with 34 feet or less of clearance. And we'll also opt to show additional clearance lines and labels, setting the interval for lines every foot, labeling every foot, and placing a label every 10 feet along the lines with the labels. Now it becomes very clear where the problem spot in this span is if we zoom in more closely, and we can see there's a little mound in the tin surface that's causing the clearance issues. If we go back to the plan view and look at the aerial imagery, we can see there's nothing special in this area, so this may be a good candidate for regrading to fix the issue. Modifying your tin surface to reflect regrading is outside the scope of this video, but if you were to delete the ground points in this area you're regrading and replace them with points with the new elevations based on the regrading, you can regenerate your tin surface. And if we do that and regenerate the tin so that the mound area is leveled off, and we rerun the Isoclearance feature, and then we can display the contour lines again, limiting the display again to 34 feet or less, and we see that no clearance lines are shown now, and the clearance issue is resolved. We hope that this video helps demonstrate how easy it is to use the Isoclearance lines feature and find areas of ground surface that have insufficient clearance to make good candidates for regrading projects, and we hope that you'll be able to use this on your projects going forward. Thank you for watching. If you'd like more information about our software, please see our website at www.powerlinesystems.com or contact us at info@powerline.com. To receive a quote for purchase or renewal of your license, please contact sales@powerline.com, and for any technical inquiries, please contact support@powerline.com. Thank you for watching and your interest in our software, the industry standard in overhead line design.